Hello, I'm Ellen from the Institute for Greek Roman Classical Tradition, and I'm here with Rhiannon Daniels and Tristan Kay from the Italian department, and they're going to tell us how they celebrated the anniversary of Dante in a very distinctive way. So would one of you like to tell us what you did?
Yeah, so...
Should I say something a bit generally about Dante and the anniversary? So it's 700 years since Dante's death this year. So Dante died in 1321. 2021 marks 700 years since his death in exile in Ravenna, exile from Florence. And this year has been packed with Dante events all around the world. Many of them unfortunately had to be virtual, but not all of them. There were some in person, and there were sort of artistic celebrations, exhibitions, there were musical adaptations, there were endless academic events and conferences and seminars and so forth. And we knew that in Bristol we wanted to do something to contribute to that and to commemorate Dante. But we wanted to do something a little bit different. I think there was, especially because we wanted to do it in person towards the end of the year, there had been so many sort of conferences by that point that we thought it would be good to do something a little bit different and that played to the interests of our department and our faculty, really.
Yeah, so we were approached by an artist and a printmaker called John McDowell, who I'd worked with before, saying that he really wanted to make an artist book in relation to Dante. And so we decided that that would be a really nice project to actually invite another small group of artists, all of whom work in different media, so ranging from kind of very hand-made, sort of handmade woodcuts through to digital photography, screen printing, all sorts of different sorts of ways of making artist books. And see what they came up with, really. So we had a collection of 8 artists who all made a book. But one of the other things that we really wanted to do was connect as much as possible to what we have in Bristol and to our special collections, for example, to the historic material that we have. And one of the things that we were quite taken with was a facsimile of a manuscript, which I think was copied in about 1337, which was made, so the facsimile edition of that manuscript was made to celebrate the 600th anniversary of Dante's death, so in 1921. And there was a limited edition of 35 copies, of which I think Bristol Special Collections has number 175. Mm-hmm. So that we had seen in our special collections, and we thought it would be really lovely to be able to not just celebrate Dante by having an in-person event and bringing people together in person in a particular moment, but actually to make things and make a material record of what we've done, so that we could then put that materiality, that sort of material object, into special collections next to the 1921 exhibition catalogue as well.
That's a lovely idea. So the artist books, I think, such a fascinating plan, and of course we've seen some of them on display down in the Humanities building. As you said at your conference, Dante's had such a long association with Dante books, Dante illustrations, and this is a real sort of contribution to that tradition. I particularly enjoyed the image of Satan, but are there other examples from the artist books that you particularly like that you want to show us, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, they were all fascinating and sort of really individual in their own ways. I mean, for me, one of the really powerful things about an artist's book is precisely that idea that even if the finished product doesn't look particularly book-like, in other words, doesn't look like a traditional codex, it has to condense, it has to take an idea, a sort of germ of something from Dante, and condense it into quite a sort of small, what am I trying to say, an object which captures the essence of something rather than responding in a very kind of illustrative manner to individual episodes. So I personally find all of the books in that way really stimulating, because you get this kind of insight into the ways in which different people have homed in on particular ideas, particular concepts, particular parts of Dante's imagery, and then kind of put those together in new ways. So that, yeah, there are some artist books which are very obviously responding to specific images, and you can identify a particular canto or a particular character. Mm-hmm. But there are other books which are much more conceptual.
And they're so different, aren't they? I mean, they're responding. They've all picked up on, as you say, completely different aspects of Dante's work. I think that's one of the things that's quite powerful about it, as well as a collection. It's just the way that Dante continues to sort of stimulate such different responses and ideas, and there's such a richness and diversity of images and ideas within the text that people can today connect to their own world, I think.
Yeah, and I think all of the artists really felt the weight of tradition, if I can put it that way, sort of behind them. And I mean by that the kind of the visual tradition that stretches all the way back to obviously the kind of manuscript miniatures that you get in some of the early manuscripts, through to people like Botticelli in the 15th century, and then through to kind of Doré in the 19th century and so on. And they were really kind of grappling with how to where to kind of insert themselves in that tradition. And one of the books that I thought did that in a really interesting way was by Sophie Loss, and she deliberately cut out, if you like, kind of distanced the context from the characters of Dante and Virgil, and did a series of 3 photographs that represent fairly conceptually sort of hell, purgatory and heaven, which stand independently of then a very small codex within which the pages are very white, and they just have images of 2 pairs of figures kind of superimposed onto the kind of white space, so that you can hold the small book in your hand, kind of hold Dante and Virgil, who are your kind of guides to the kind of hinterland of the vastness of the sort of context that is potentially out there. And you can place your mini figures almost against any form of context. So you're literally sort of, you can move them around, you can put them against the backgrounds that she's presented of hell, purgatory and paradise, but you can potentially kind of think about other ways in which you might move them around and kind of manipulate them.
Yeah.
That's a wonderful example. Yeah.
Should we
Yes.
show you the book?
Yes.
So this was the sort of record we wanted to have, that maybe in 21 people will come back to this and decide to do something similar.
So the cover of it says Dante Libri Nuovi.
Yeah, so Dante's new books, and it's sort of alluding, I think, to Dante's Vita Nuova, which is John McDowell, who's sort of conceived of this project as well with us, has went for that title, didn't he? So we have an introduction here talking about Dante in Bristol, the place of Dante in the department through the decades and today, and then contextualising what it is we've done this year. There's an introduction by John on the idea of the artist's book, and as a very helpful kind of way in, I think, to the volume as a whole. And then we have these beautiful, we have the example from Botticelli, Rhiannon talking about the sort of illustrative tradition of Dante, and then we have the ones that were commissioned. So we have Kate Bernstein's one called In One Volume, that refers to in the last canto of Dante's Paradiso. He talks about the whole conceiving of the whole universe bound in un volume, so in one volume, and she sort of presents the whole poem encapsulated in this one artist's book.
It's really cleverly done, so that the book itself is literally bound by a leather tie, which has an extract from the description of Minos in Inferno, who wraps his tail a certain number of times around the sinners to determine which circle they will go into. But then the book comes apart when it's unbound and the leaves are scattered.
Yeah.
There are 3 sections, obviously playing with the idea of the importance of the number 3 and the 3 cantiche. And again, she's got lots of overlaid different translations, which really signal that kind of the weight of that translation history, and lots of imagery relating to sort of medieval elements. So she says in her artist statement that, you know, even the colour, sort of the silver and the red, relates to the Guelphs, which was the political party that Dante was allied to.
Probably should turn it around.
Yes. So it's this wonderful, wonderfully vivid colour, and so interesting, as you say, with your explication of this, that this is taking us to a new understanding of the book. As you say, it's not a simple codex, and it's also taking us to a new understanding of the relationship between art and word, isn't it? The way in which, as you say, these overlaying translations are presented in this book. It's a really, really superb. It's a really superb material object and a piece of art. Yeah.
I'm thinking in simplest terms, this book and a lot of the others that follow really play with the idea of kind of unfolding, a narrative unfolding, and the book literally unfolding. This is another great example of Ian Bottle's work. So this is a 3-dimensional plywood sort of slipcase that holds 3 volumes, which then pull out and expand out and are self-supporting with the kind of plywood end pages.
There they are, indeed.
And I think this is a really great example of somebody who's really working up the sort of working with a lot of imagery, which then is so kind of highly worked, it becomes very kind of condensed, very abstract. And then I think he places the images together in new ways which kind of bring out new resonances and play with that idea of kind of repetition, which is really important in Dante. So there's kind of a lot of novelty and newness, but also actually kind of repeated imagery which comes around in a kind of sense of structure.
And another question for people watching this, because I'm sure many people will be saying, where can I see these? Where can I access these in the future? What's going to happen to the artists' books in the future?
We're hoping they're going to go on to multiple other exhibitions. So they will, actually I just heard this morning that they will go up to Manchester to John Rylands library in late April, I think, where people will be able to book in and do what they call a close-up in the Rylands, where they have books out and kind of open out of cases and people can come and handle them and hear people talking about them. Hopefully they'll go on to other places as well.
We're hoping to be able to include some of these images on our sort of website for the series of events as well.
They are there.
They are there already. Fantastic. Okay.
So there is a kind of an online catalogue essentially, where you can see the images of the books, you can read the artist statements, and there are a few photographs of the exhibition that we had in Bristol as well while that was on.
That's wonderful. So they'll stay together as a collection.
They will. Yeah. And most importantly, of course, the catalogue will be freely available to people in special collections, but anyone can book an appointment in special collections to come and have a look at the catalogue. And it was a catalogue that the IGRCT very generously sponsored, so we're really delighted that this will be the kind of permanent record that stays in Bristol, even though the books themselves will eventually scatter and potentially be bought as well and go into other collections.
Wonderful. Well, we're very proud to have been involved in this, and it's been a wonderful and I think really thought-provoking event. I'm sure Dante will be proud that he's continuing to generate ideas and creativity into the 21st century. And thank you so much for telling us about it.
Yes, thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you for the sponsorship.